With just 6 weeks to go before Election Day, a new poll by the Associated Press finds 13% of likely voters are still undecided. But now that they've had some time to sleep on last night's debate, what are voters thinking? Did last night's debate change any minds? For more on that, we turn to political writer and commentator Rich Rubino. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
So, last night, what was your overall impression?
I thought it was interesting. For the first 30 minutes, Donald Trump tried to pivot to Hillary Clinton's left. If you saw it, it was interesting. He would say specifically that NAFTA, which was actually negotiated by George H.W. Bush, but it was signed by President Bill Clinton. He actually pointed out Bill Clinton, and he said it was the worst trade agreement in history. And then you had Hillary Clinton essentially somewhat defending it. She didn't actually specifically say, like she did in 2008, for example, when she would really criticize the deal and say she was going to renegotiate it when she ran for president and she was competing with Barack Obama and John Edwards, who were both against it. This time around, she kind of said, well, Bill Clinton negotiated some good trade deals. And then he went after her, too, on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And Hillary, who had said it was the gold standard, kind of said, well, it didn't quite meet the standard. So it was interesting on that. And then also the Iraq War. Donald Trump was one of the few Republican candidates who can actually get to her left on that. Most Republicans, literally, there were like 6 Republicans who in the House of Representatives who voted against it, and one in the United States Senate, Lincoln Chafee, and he's no longer a Republican. So Trump has to say that, he was against the Iraq War. And then it goes, there was the interview that he did with Howard Stern where he kind of said that, well, maybe we should go in. But then he said he talked to Sean Hannity. It's a great promotion for Sean Hannity, by the way. And he talked to Neil Cavuto, and it was different. But, now that the Iraq War is unpopular, you see a lot of Republicans, big-name Republicans like Senator Tom Colbert from Oklahoma, now saying it was a bad idea. So the question is, what did Trump really feel at the time? Well, I guess everyone goes into their echo chamber and everyone, is saying either he did support it or he didn't support it. It depends on which interview you watch.
It was interesting to see Trump move more to the left in a lot of different areas, especially in terms of trade deals, something that goes against the typical Republican stance. So my question to you is, do you think that he pandered to those Rust Belt states talking about these trade deals and made any difference for some of those voters who are maybe on the fence about voting for him?
Yeah, actually, I think NAFTA is really a 4-letter word. If you go to the Rust Belt, if you go to Ohio, you go to a lot of the manufacturing parts of the country. There are a lot of people that really blame NAFTA. They see, manufacturing jobs egressing from their states, and they say this is specifically, they will point to NAFTA, whether it is automation, whether it's something else. NAFTA is what they generally point to. A lot of these voters are they're somewhat socially conservative, but they tend to be fiscally populist. And you see a lot of these people in places like rural parts of the swing states. And I think that for a lot of those people, Donald Trump is the more populist candidate than Hillary Clinton is. And it's interesting because Clinton did not come out directly say something like, well, we're really going to renegotiate these trade deals, or say something really critical of NAFTA. Perhaps it was because her husband was in the audience. But it's an issue that Trump is unique because most Republicans, and pretty much most Republicans who was running against in the primary, were free traders and would have supported NAFTA. Trump is unique in that he can specifically come out and say, it was your husband that signed it, and he's as a Republican candidate. So it's actually going back. If you look at it, though, he's really a paleoconservative because the Republican Party used to be the party of protectionism, under Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Benjamin Harrison. That used to be their party's ethos was, tariffs but lower taxes, and he's going back to that.
Let's talk about last night's moment when they talked about the birther movement. Do you think Trump didn't apologize? Do you think he made the best of that? Was his response good enough?
No, it's still being talked about. I think that for a lot of his people, certainly for a lot of kind of populists, a lot of right wingers, that's what actually brought them to Donald Trump. Because remember, he had 17 other people that he was running against the last time around, and a lot of them legitimately believe that President Obama was born in Kenya, and that was what brought them to Trump. Now, will they go someplace else? Probably not. But that being said, the fact that the birther issue came up, the fact that Lester Holt brought it up in the first place, I think is really going to have deleterious effects, specifically with voters in the showdown states, in the suburban parts of, for example, suburban Philadelphia, suburban Pittsburgh, with college educations, for example. Those two voters tend to be the ones that are most turned off by the whole birther movement, and the fact that Trump then turned to Hillary and said that Hillary had started it. I think that she didn't actually specifically point to Hillary, but she pointed to Patty Sullis Doyle, and he quoted to Sidney Blumenthal, advisors to Hillary. But the fact is, Hillary has been, and her campaign have been great today in terms of saying that, no, we weren't the one that's brought this up. Someone brought it to us. Patty Doyle said she called up the Obama campaign, David Plouffe, the manager, and apologized for it. So right now it appears that it's kind of become an albatross on Donald Trump. But they say there are people who were brought to his movement because of that issue. But if he's trying to expand to suburban voters in Philadelphia or in the I-95 corridor in Florida, I don't think that's helping.
And it certainly doesn't help with the minority voters he's trying to bring in. And another thing that got brought up was the stop and frisk to put a halt to gun violence, especially in Chicago. He's been really pandering to the African-American vote, but when he talks about stop and frisk and basically taking people's guns away, stripping them of their constitutional rights, is that sending African-Americans the wrong message, perhaps sending them mixed messages, and also those people, those Second Amendment right advocates?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think he's really trying to appeal to the African-American voter. The African-American voter, since Gerald Ford in 1976 has gotten less than 20% for the Republican candidate. And this isn't only Barack Obama. This is Bill Clinton. This was, Walter Mondale got over 80% of the African-American vote. I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to appeal to those suburban voters again, the soccer moms again, to show that he's not racist, that he's willing to speak in an African-American community. But I don't think he specifically appeals, and I think that it would be a godsend for him if he got 9 or 10% of the African American vote nationally. He has some high-profile African Americans like Don King supporting him, but I think, as I say, I think this is more. He tends to be doing this more for political reasons. He's trying to do it to appeal to a different constituency to show that he's more moderate than appealing directly to them.
And they've got sort of a unique constituency. What do you think is more at risk? The college-educated suburbanites who usually vote Republican but have been reluctant to side with Trump, or the Democratic-leaning millennials who are thinking about dropping Clinton in favor of Gary Johnson or even Jill Stein?
Yeah, well, I think that would be great for Donald Trump's case. Remember, first of all, in Jill Stein's case, I actually think that she won't be much of a factor for Hillary, because I think most of her supporters are so disaffected with the Democratic system, or rather with the Democratic Party, that they were going to vote for somebody other than Hillary Clinton, or they would stay home. The whole Never Hillary movement, the Burning Your Bus movement. In Gary Johnson's case, he's fiscally conservative, socially liberal, and a foreign policy non-interventionist who's generally more moderate than the average libertarian. So I think that he's not as ideologically intransigent as, say, Michael Bednarik or Harry Brown or previous libertarian nominees. So I think that they both potentially could take from Hillary. But I think that Donald Trump, I don't think he's going to do very well with millennials whatsoever. But the suburban voters in places like the I-95 corridor in Florida, he does need. But that being said, he's also going to siphon a lot of the blue-collar voters who would have supported Democrats in the past, who, for example, supported her husband in places like Macomb County, Michigan, because he has been such a tribune of economic nationalism.
We've got one debate down, 2 more to go. Is each debate individually important, or will voters be looking at all 3 of these collectively when they make their decision at the ballot?
I don't think that voters are necessarily going to look at it just based on the debate. I mean, you got to remember, first of all, that we're talking about voters in the most 10 states. So in 40 states, whether it's Massachusetts, California, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, who's going to win that state. So the campaigns basically they spend no money there, and they're on the electoral sidelines. So you're talking about voters really in places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Hampshire, Arizona, where the vote actually matters. And I think that they are going to be inundated, whether they it's subconsciously or not, with advertisements from the candidates. And I think that's going to have a lot more effect on them, unless there is an extreme gaffe in one of these debates, or for example, if Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or one of them were to come actually unhinged in the 3rd debate. But based on what we saw last night, I think you're going to see generally the status quo.
All right. Clinton and Trump both share the same goal, persuading voters to disregard long-held negative views of them. Rich Rubino, thanks so much for joining us tonight and weighing in.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on, Danielle.